Welcome to this interview on Meet the Candidate, and my guest this afternoon is Hilary Franz, who is running for Commissioner of Public Lands. Welcome, Hilary.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity.
So this is that get acquainted interview, letting people know that candidates are volunteers from the community. Starting with, tell us about where you grew up.
So I grew up actually splitting my time between two places. First, my family ranch in Pierce County, where my grandparents came in 1938, and 3 cattle farms and small forest landowner. And then also split my time in Portland, Oregon, where I was raised by my single father. So the I-5 corridor was my travel.
So where'd you go to school for most of your elementary school?
Mostly in Portland, Oregon, so and in high school as well. And then went to school on the East Coast for college and law school.
So that's a lot. That gives you some variety and background. And what were some activities that you particularly enjoyed in school?
Oh, well, so first of all, many people may know this now, but I was a competitive ice skater. I actually grew up with Tanya Harding. From the age of 5 until 18. So for 13 years, I was on the ice every morning from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., 6 days a week, 365 days of the year. I actually, a lot of people, I didn't realize this until I became an adult, how valuable ice skating actually is. And it's not because it teaches you how to use a crowbar or avoid a crowbar and use a blade. I always say that. I said, look, avoid the crowbar and carry a blade. And it worked for firefighting and forest health. If you haven't noticed, the blades work the best. But one of the things I learned the most is, we oftentimes are very afraid to take steps and take risks. And the fact is, I say to my agency that I lead, the 1,500 men and women, that if we're standing still, we're failing ourselves, we're failing our agency, we're failing our state. Take a step forward. You may fall down. But you're going to learn something. And in ice skating, you fall down 1,000 times before you actually land a triple. And so falling isn't seen as failure. Falling is only seen as a step towards success. And so it's a huge, valuable lesson, not only learning how to use a blade, but also learning how to fall down, get back up, and keep on trying.
Well, I would imagine with that dedication to your sport that you probably didn't have a job in high school, but I do often ask people about what was your first work experience?
Yeah, so I actually did. I worked in a hospital. It's funny because I tell my kids this. They don't remember the candy striper days, but I worked in a hospital as a candy striper in the hospice unit. And then at Providence Hospital, actually in Portland, Oregon. And then I also obviously worked on the family farm. But in addition to that, I worked in everything from admin to data assistant to on the assembly line. I had to pay my way through college as my dad was a single parent. He worked for the city of Portland, and it was very important that I actually raise the money to be able to go to college. And so high school, I did a lot of work.
Okay. Well, when you went to college on the East Coast, that gives you where, and then that gives you some interesting insights perhaps into comparing the two coasts.
Yeah, so I moved to Massachusetts actually, where I spent 7 years for college and law school. Very different coast. It is colder over there, although not too much colder than Eastern Washington. I'd say it's a lot faster pace. Not only do they talk faster, but they move faster. I think what I like to say is I came back home. I came back to Washington State after law school in 1997. It's been my home ever since. But what I did bring is I don't bring sort of I bring sort of an urgency. You know, the thing about the East Coast is they're all about action. Time, we don't have time to waste. We got to get to work. We got to get things done. They talk fast, they act fast. And frankly, I think, especially when you look at sort of the challenges our state's facing and wildfire and forest health and other urgent challenges, we need a lot less talking and a lot more doing. And I bring that sort of sensibility from the East Coast.
I'd also like to ask folks about any volunteer or other kinds of things that you get passionate about outside of work. What strikes your fancy?
What strikes my fancy? Well, so obviously, I would just say, as a mom of 3 kids, one of my biggest responsibilities is being there for them and really helping raise them and make sure they are leaders for the future. But then specifically in volunteer, I've done a lot of work within areas of rape and crisis counseling, suicide crisis counseling. I did a lot of work in mental health for about 4 years in everything from bipolar, schizophrenia to multiple mental health disorders. I also worked in the area of homelessness and helping women and children get back up on their feet. And so big areas oftentimes are in the social services, everything from affordable housing and homelessness to helping those most vulnerable in mental health and other critical services.
So why volunteer to run for public office? Not everybody chooses to do that. What prompted you to step into politics?
You know, so it's actually been a dream of mine for a very long time. When I was, 7 or 8 years old, Senator Ted Kulongowski was running for office, and my father worked for the city of Portland, and I spent every day after school in City Hall and on weekends. So when my homework was done, my job was to review his numbers on the budget and make sure the numbers were right. I don't know if you remember all those reams on the computer paper, so I'd flip page by page by page, checking the math. When I was finished with that, I got to walk the halls and oftentimes found myself in city council chambers where they were debating issues from everything from public safety, transportation, housing, race and social justice issues. And so it became very much a part of my blood. And I love the context of being able to take really significant problems and challenges and be able to make a difference in improving not only the people who are here today, but future generations on critical issues around environment, economic, and social issues. And so running for office, when I was 8, I actually went doorbelling for Senator Ted Kulongowski. And I said to my father, I want to work to help this guy get elected. And so he took me like I was trick-or-treating every, house by house. And he stayed at the bottom and I had to walk up the stairs and pitch Senator Ted Kulongowski. And that was that point that I got bit by, the policy and government and politics bug, and been sort of a dream ever since. And then 2016 created that opportunity to run for statewide office. And before that, I was in local government as a city council member.
Okay. Well, that brings us to the last question, which I asked every candidate, is to explain now, why should people vote for Hilary Franz for Commissioner of Public Lands?
Yeah. So my background is in environmental land use, and I have spent 20 plus years before serving as Commissioner of Public Lands in the area of helping try to make sure we're making our lands and environment today healthy and future, but at the same time not compromise, and in fact strengthening our local economies and making sure that every person has the overhead food on the table and have opportunity for their kids. I have served in the last 4 years Commissioner of Public Lands, taking the most significant threats facing Washington State, obviously wildfire front and center, as well as really getting at the root of the issue that we have a forest health crisis. And we have to restore the health of our forest so we can reduce these catastrophic fires. In the 4 years, I had huge progress in developing a forest health plan where we are truly changing the trajectory of 1.25 million acres of forests over the next 20 years. My goal is to double down and get it done in 10 years, kind of going for not a double, but a quadruple, they would say, in ice skating. In addition to that, securing the resources we need to get on these fires quicker. But also the fact is many of our communities are struggling economically, where even pre-COVID, we had 7 to 12% unemployment in a lot of our communities. And because our agency generates over $325 million of buy-in for schools and counties, I believe we have the ability to be making more significant investments in these communities that grows our natural resource economies, grows the jobs opportunities. We've made progress, but we have a long ways to go. And I think too often in government, and I learned this by serving now in the first 4 years, is too often in government waits until we're right in the midst of a crisis before we take action. And it costs a lot more for us when we're in a reaction state. And the fact is we are well on our way to being in even greater wildfire crisis, a greater natural disaster crisis, and a greater economic crisis. But we have the ability to change that trajectory if we make the investments now. And when we make the investments in those landscapes and communities, we actually not only heal the environment and make it stronger and more resilient, but we also heal our communities and our economies and make them more stronger and resilient. And that's why I'm running for office, to get more done and also be able to serve every single person in Washington State, not just the west side, not just the east side, but the entire state.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today, Hilary. I know it's been a really busy fire season for you, and we've had a little trouble connecting, but I'm glad we connected.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
90 million Christians are eligible to vote.
40 million didn't.
That's 45% of eligible Christians not voting.
We can change that.
We believe We Vote was designed to arm people of faith with information on candidates
and how they line up with biblical and constitutional principles.
It's simply WeBelieveWeVote.com.
We're on a mission to rev up the 2020 election.
Tell your friends, your neighbors, and especially your pastors to rev up.
Be an educated voter.
Arm yourself with truth based on the Word of God.
2020, rev up.
Register, educate, vote.
Rev up.
Rev up.
Rev up 2020.